Welcome everyone. We are giving just a few more minutes to give everyone else a opportunity to pop on, and Dr. Roberts will be joining us shortly.
All right, I think we are ready to get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening as we cover a very exciting topic. That is something that we can all do. Everyone can benefit from knowing this information. My wife and I are very excited to share with you a technology that we actually trademarked called holographic manipulation therapy. And this will absolutely change the lives of anyone who learns it or uses it regularly on themselves or their clients. And tonight will serve as an introductory. And we will do a demonstration of one of these techniques so you'll all get a chance to experience it. This technique for the average person today in our modern society will make meditation obsolete. But before we get started into this, as many of you are probably wondering, what the heck is holographic manipulation and what does it all mean anyway? Well, stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, as we begin to explore this very fascinating and groundbreaking subject, which deals with how the human being stores memories and experiences, the mechanisms behind how traumatic memories are stored, and really what we can do about it. My job is to show you what is possible and to end as much suffering as I can. That's my whole purpose. My name is Dr. Gabe Roberts, and I work virtually with psychosomatic issues, including autoimmune, chronic pain, digestive illnesses, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, chronic fatigue, mystery illnesses of every kind that every doctor of every specialty, whether natural or conventional base, can't figure out, and the people are still suffering. So my specialty is treating physiological illnesses that have at its root cause suppressed emotion. And the work I do is not something I chose to do, as it was something that chose me. The construct of my approach is to help people drop their baggage, their emotional baggage, their beliefs that aren't helping them. And most of the time, they're not even aware they're carrying these because it resides in their subconscious mind. And is usually in the form of limiting beliefs, deep down feelings that we don't deserve X, or we aren't worthy of something, or we experience some sort of emotional pain, suffering, which eventually manifests in some sort of physical illness or pain. The baggage we carry begins around the ages of 0 to 7 years old. And this is the form of our earliest and our most powerful memories. These memories then become the standard which everything else is measured in life by. Because by the time we're 7 years old, we have already learned half of what we'll know the rest of our lives. So these early memories are very important. When a child is growing, it's not uncommon for their neurology to be developing so fast that every second there's literally millions and millions of connections being made in their brain. So that's a very crucial time. Then, as they grow into an adult years later, these lead to the single biggest contributing factor to the compromise of your health every day, the weakening of your immune system, and the sabotaging of your dreams, your goals, your relationships, is the fact that you and I constantly go in and out of memories all the time. We might even believe we're good listeners. Maybe some of you today are thinking, I'm going to listen to this. But the truth is, I don't think anyone is going to hear my entire presentation tonight. And the reason is because we go in and out of memories. We trance, as we call it. We are trance machines. We go in the trance 15 to 50 times per hour. We leave the present moment. I could be talking about something and I say the word fishing, and then suddenly your mind takes a trip. Momentarily, you go, oh yeah, that's right, the big fishing trip that my brother went on that one time. Or if I say the word grandmother, Suddenly you're remembering your grandmother's kitchen and thinking back to some dessert she used to make you. That's all it takes to trigger what's called a hologram. And every fragment of a hologram contains the entire memory. So one little thing and that entire memory comes back. Our memories are stored as 3D dimensional images within our mind. When you smell a rose, that generates a 3D image within your mind. That is a hologram. Now, we now know that all your senses work this way as well. What this means is you can take an entire traumatic experience that's happened in your life and reduce it down to a set of neurons, which are nerve cells in your body. It becomes the lump in the back of your neck that just won't go away on the right side. It becomes a lump in your throat, maybe the vice on your head that comes on when you're under emotional stress. It could be stored in any of the 1,000 neurons per square inch of the body. There's nowhere these holograms can't be stored. It's not necessarily in your mind, but in your body. It could be in the lungs. We actually call this asthma. You see, asthma doesn't respond to the normal fight or flight response. It doesn't respond to stress normally, because if a person is feeling threatened or they're under sympathetic, dominance, or they start to become stressed out, normally lung function improves. That's not the case with asthma. These memories could also be stored in adrenal glands, and those are the people that have very short tempers, the ones that are very prone to rage. If a person has what's called a broken heart, they have stored memories in the heart of loss or sadness, and it will actually give them heart trouble. These are just a couple of examples. When you remove the entire holographic memory that's stored, which we'll kind of cover soon, the somatic condition disappears. Now, this information is very important now as we're fully engulfed into the age of trauma, especially with the events of the last year or so. So with the current circumstances, many people may be thinking, well, the past is over. You can't change the past. I mean, we hear that from people time to time. The problem is it's not the past that's haunting us or causing people physiological distress. It's how the body and the mind stores the past. That's the real issue. And that is completely malleable and changeable. Remember, we aren't the way we are because of the things that happen to us. Now, that's a cop-out, even if we don't know it's a cop-out. We are the way we are because of the way we think about the things that happen to us and the way we choose to remember them. Now, it is a choice. Now, we didn't know we had a choice. Holographic manipulation therapy gives you back the power to choose how to remember these memories, and it's right at your fingertips. My wife and I are the founder of Holographic Manipulation Therapy, and I'm also a holographic memory resolution specialist. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, a self-sabotage coach, quantum integration practitioner, bioenergetic synchronization technique practitioner. I have a doctorate in chiropractic, a doctorate in metaphysics. I have a diplomat in nutrition, and I'm certified in functional medicine. I barely use a fraction of any of these therapies because, as you'll soon find out, holographic manipulation therapy can take care of anything and everything that a person presents with. Now, my personal experience is that my wife and I operated a functional medicine clinic in Kansas City for nearly a decade. And we had the privilege of treating and working with patients from all around the world. I mean, we've helped thousands of people resolve many kinds of illnesses, including autoimmune, chronic digestive problems, neurological degeneration, severe fibromyalgia, severe diabetes, and chronic fatigue. And through the years, we noticed a trending pattern that began happening with a majority of people that went through our program. Although our success rate was very high in helping people reverse their conditions and improve their symptoms, around 75% or more somehow, unwillingly and unintentionally, would sabotage their results within the next year, oftentimes having their symptoms return or a whole new set of symptoms would begin to appear. And this was troubling for us. I mean, these people were doing this completely unconsciously and not to be blamed. I even asked several mentors, and they saw the same thing. Several of my colleagues actually saw the same thing. This isn't something uncommon. I sat back and thought about it, and I began to wonder, what was I missing? And then it dawned on me, and these people were always looking for something outside of themselves. They were never going to find it. They were always looking for another protocol. What's another herb, or what's another pill, or a nutritional supplement? Or if I'm doing another elimination diet, I'm doing keto, I'm doing this. They would always think of something else, and the answer had to come from the inside. So I began to study everything I could about behavior, and it all led back to the mind. I mean, that's where it all starts. I've consulted many wise men and mentors that weren't doctors, but they had a great understanding of the mind. And one of them actually told me, if you're not happy with your results, you'll need to learn something about you that you don't know. Now, this made a lot of sense to me, and it really propelled me to go into a whole different direction than most of my colleagues and most of my university educations had come from. What the problem was is I was targeting 2/3 of the human being in my practice. I was targeting the physical body in regards to nutrition and using acupuncture to make sure their skeletal structures were all properly aligned, and muscle tension and all that was reduced. I was also targeting their energetic body with quantum integration methods, finding Lyme, finding stealth infections, H. pylori, Epstein-Barr viruses, and other pathogenic opportunistic microbes. So we also ran in-depth functional tests, hair analysis, stool samples on our patients as well. I even did emotional clearing on people. So I used very powerful flower essences, complex frequencies to resolve conflict, as well as what's known as best level 3. And this immediately rewires an emotional event in the person's mind. And it was my understanding that this would help them mentally, or so I thought. So for all practical purposes, my clinic was considered world-class. But this was not enough. I was not even scratching the surface on the mental body. I was working equivalent to one piece of vegetable in a big bowl of soup, like one little carrot or maybe even a little chunk of a potato in what you'd call a big, massive bowl of, like beef stew or something. And this analogy makes sense because when I would clear an emotion on someone, that patient would always come back and something else had replaced it, another destructive emotion. So it's like we took one step forward and we took one step back. And again, I was essentially doing what 95% of other functional medicine doctors do. I focused on the physical body using nutrition and herbs. Again, correct alignment. As a chiropractor, you working on the energetic body, but the mental body was inadequately addressed. Ladies and gentlemen, the mental body is the causative body. Now, there's a lot of research backing that up. Dr. Bruce Lipton is considered the world's leading authority on cell physiology, and his research proves that your thoughts actually shape the structure of your DNA. Thoughts can actually change the shape of your DNA. So what exactly does this mean when it comes to thoughts? What I was missing with all my years of emotional work is that I wasn't aware there are two types of thoughts. The first type of thoughts are the ones you're consciously aware of. Now, these make up 0.006% of your overall awareness. So they are the least informed, and they're the last to know anything. And yet they're the loudest ones. That's the voice you hear in your head right now when you might be saying, what voice? Those are the voices. So naturally, those were the ones I focused on with my patients when they came in. They had something going on and they heard it in their head. And this was the exact reason I missed a boat. So Dr. Bruce Lipton is referring to, when he says your thoughts, he means your dominant thoughts. Your dominant thoughts are not the ones you're conscious of. They're not the ones you're paying attention to. They're the ones that are operating below the threshold of your conscious awareness. They make up 99.994% of your unconscious mind. They're the ones that are always playing, even when you're asleep. Now, they're the ones that also manage all the operations in your body, including your endocrine function, your digestion, your circulation, your hormones, as well as they run and manage the operations on autoimmune diseases, chronic illness, chronic pain, depression, diabetes, cancer, tumors, and much more. And they're the ones that pull into your awareness things that are in harmony with those thoughts without your permission and without your consent. There's a great documentary called Brzezinski. Now, this details a cell physiologist, a PhD named Stanislaw Brzezinski from Texas. And now he had a treatment that cured 25% cure rate of cancer. It might not sound great at first, but Western medicine, with billions of dollars spent on cancer research, claims a little less than a 15% cure rate. So this doctor actually had 10% more success in curing cancer than conventional care. And eventually this caught on. He was sued by the FDA. The government went after him. It led to the largest legal battle in FDA history. They arrested him. They sued him. They took away his patents until he actually fought back in court and he actually won. So they tried to ruin his life and his reputation, but he won the case. And he's actually working on curing people again. But when they asked this doctor specifically, what causes cancer? Now, he pointed out that every cell on the body has two switches, okay? He pointed out that every cell in the body has two switches. So let's picture this being our cell. And we have a switch here, and we have a switch here. Now, the human body has anywhere from 70,000 to 100,000 cells. And he pointed out that one switch, we'll call this a suppressor, and we'll call this one a growth switch. Now, this doctor pointed out that if one switch is on and the other one's turned off, everything's fine. If we have one switch turned on and the other one turned on, that's the problem. So whenever we have the growth switch turned on and the suppressor switch turned on at the same time, that causes the cell to begin to overgrow. And that's the textbook definition of cancer. So then he was further questioned, and they said, Dr. Brzezinski, what causes these switches to go out of control? And one word he said, neurotransmitters. It wasn't Roundup or inflammation or all these other things we hear about. It was neurotransmitters. These are the chemical building blocks of your thoughts. These are the molecules that pass between nerve cells. So basically what he's saying is the component that causes these switches to go on and off and make our body start to have cancer growing out of control is our thoughts. Now that's very, very powerful. Another doctor who started off as a German medical doctor has a map of the body, and this is scientifically validated today with over 100,000 case studies behind it. He's proven that every cell in the body is affected by a different emotion or trauma. You see, he used to be an oncologist and he used conventional methods, radiation, chemotherapy, and now he doesn't do any of that. When people come to him with cancer, he tries to find their emotional conflicts in their body and help them release it. His name is Dr. Reich Hammer, and he has a documented, court-verified 92.3% success rate in curing cancer. So knowing all this, Tiffany and I began researching every technique of therapy, which was aimed at communicating between all levels of the neurology, using practical and very easy, reproducible results. They must be practical, they must be quick acting, and they must be really easy to use and duplicatable, okay? Meditation is great, has a great track history, but it's not as effective for people as you think because of our culture and the socio-economic society we live in today. I've yet to see anyone who meditates for years and has their trauma or their emotions healed in their subconscious mind. I've never met one who has a calm, emotionally healthy subconscious. They may be out there, and it may work for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone. This is just one of the distinguishing traits of HMT, or holographic manipulation therapy. It works for everyone. Okay, HMT works for a 7-year-old child to a 90-year-old. I've used it successfully on those ages and everyone in between. Other techniques out there that we know of are hypnosis, one called EMDR, or eye movement desensitization reprocessing. There's one called emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping. Okay. And there's other therapies like Psych K, which are examples of therapies commonly used to address the subconscious mind, and some are more effective than others. My experience in using them and the research behind them is they're all reducing techniques. Now, hypnosis is probably the most helpful out of all those. It claims a 93% success rate in some of the literature. However, they may reduce the emotional trauma going on during the process, but the trouble is they don't remove the entire hologram. They don't remove that entire 3D image. And the theory of the hologram is every single fragment of a hologram contains the entire image. So if you remove part of it, but you leave fragments behind, and then one of those fragments actually gets stimulated, you have the entire memory coming back. Maybe some of you listening to this has had that happen before. You go and get some change work done, you get something cleared out, and then you feel better initially, but yet something in the environment triggers that fragment that was left behind, and the entire memory comes back. Now, I use the word neurology a lot, and what I mean by that is the conscious, the subconscious, and the human nervous system itself. So again, there's 1,000 neurons per square inch of our body, and each one capable of holding onto a thought. So the body must be included if the therapy is to treat all levels of the neurology. And this is probably one of the most important factors when it comes to HMT that excludes it from other ones, is the physical body is involved. Another limitation with other therapies is they are unable to bypass the lessons that the unconscious mind learns and wants to hold on to. This happens at a time when a person's life, when they have an emotional experience and there's pain behind it, or there's a physical injury that occurs. The unconscious mind attaches a lesson to it, and it's a protective mechanism. It's there to remind you to not do it again. And this way, your unconscious mind perceives it that if he or she forgets this feeling, they'll lose the lesson or the bad experience, and it will happen again. Chronic pain that lingers near an old injury site, long after it's healed, is an example of this. It's the exact same mechanism with emotional trauma as well. So your brain doesn't differentiate very well between emotional pain or physical pain. On a brain scan, if somebody rejected you, the same parts of the brain light up as if you'd been stuck with a knife or stepped on a hot piece of coal. The brain lights up in the same area. Now, to have a better understanding of how all this works, we'll go over the basics of how memories, particularly traumatic memories, are stored. So think about this streak here. This is how, so what we'll do is we'll call this our baseline, okay? And then we'll call this the threshold. We'll call this T10. And T10 is the maximum that the nervous system can handle. Basically, once you hit there, you're probably dead. It's the max the body can handle. Not always, but not everyone dies from it, but that's what happens. And now, baseline, this is us kind of going through our life. We have ups and downs emotionally. When trauma occurs, we climb all the way up. It looks like this. And then what happens when we get to about T9, we'll call this down here, okay, T1. When we get to about here, a protective mechanism kicks in. The neurology does something very amazing to protect the organism. Okay. It basically shuts everything down. It literally turns the body off. And some of this, you might be familiar with a movie where a girl all of a sudden faints. She has this emotional spike and all of a sudden she just faints. Well, that's the exact same thing. Some of you listening might have experienced that in your life where you had such a major trauma to where you black out for a second. That's what happens here. So the neurology basically zip files this. It basically encapsulates the whole thing and stores it as a hologram. And this trauma basically continues to go on. It keeps continuing and continuing and continuing within this hologram. So that is what is targeted with HMT therapy. And within this universe, within this container, okay, that moment, that consciousness from this event is actually frozen in time. It's happening over and over and over again. Now it's isolated and it's actually stored. It's almost quarantined within the neurology. And over time, the way our neurology hard drive begins to compensate with all this data is it begins to sort things out by emotions and similarities. It'll actually sort them out by what they have in common. Now, this is not a linear or logical system. Our conscious mind might think it is, but remember, that awareness is only 0.006%, and it's the loudest and least informed. So when we hit T9 and the thing shuts down, we actually go back to conscious. We actually go back to our normal day-to-day routine. We actually kind of go back to this baseline afterwards. But this is stored here as a hologram, and whatever's going on in here continues to go. Now, you could probably sit here and think about an event that had you worked up, an argument with someone, or maybe witnessing a tragic event. And the minute you think about that, you'll notice your pulse increases. Why? Because your entire nervous system is under the impression that this is still going on. And this is basically how we store memories. So what we do is, with holographic regression, is we're going from the present moment and letting the client's unconscious mind take us back to the moment wherever it was. It could have been a playground event as a child, or it could have been a living room, or even on a battlefield. It could have been something that happened 2 hours ago. The mechanism is all the same. With this kind of work, we do something called holographic regression. And we don't need to relive the trauma, as is the case with maybe other techniques out there. But it's important to remember that every memory is a hologram. It's a container. And the exact same emotional energy that was present at the time when the event was recorded is constantly in here, constantly running. And it's expressed holographically and connected to every system in the body. Now, acupuncture and Oriental medicine medical theory have actually embraced this idea for thousands of years. The Chinese have known about this concept of what when your body hurts a certain area, it means something. I mean, they could a Chinese could watch you walk across the street, and they would say, "Oh, you have a problem with your father when you're about 5 years old." And you might say, "How could they possibly know that?" We might even blow it off. But they understood this really well. Now, they didn't have the technology. They actually don't call it holograms. They compare it to other things like valleys, and rivers, and things like that. But now research is really beginning to show that the very construct of our universe is holographic. And as we dive into the process of connecting with these holograms, for best success, we use a metaphorical approach. See, our unconscious mind works with and understands metaphors very well. So these allow us to access and work with all the parts within our nervous system. And we do this by having the person describe the pain, describe the emotional challenge they're having. But no matter what they use to describe it, it's still a metaphor. It's still the container. It's the container that stores all the stuff in there that's still circulating and going and unwinding on an endless loop. You can use a metaphor to change another metaphor, and you can use a hologram to change another hologram. These things are very plastic. So the remedy to neutralize these stored containers is through holographic manipulation. And it works by removing the stored containers of something that's emotionally painful, traumatic, an ongoing occurrence, a memory, just something that's not helping a person live their best life. So through holographic insertion or regression, the purpose is to basically inject into these containers a new awareness, a new story, something that where the person survives and install a new scene different than the one that was traumatic. Because remember, the terminal event, okay, T10 has not happened here. It went offline before. So what this means is the unconscious mind doesn't know that it survived. It still thinks the body's in danger. And that's the mechanism behind post-traumatic stress, behind people that have major anxiety for no reason. They're very hypervigilant. Now, let me ask you, if a person's under that threat constantly, and we go in and out of trance constantly, 15 to 50 times per hour, we have memories come up, and most of them we're not even aware of. What happens to your immune system when all this is going on? The immune system drops in functionality. The T cells go way down. There's something known as general adaptation syndrome, GAS. You'll see the mechanism behind it when adrenaline rises, the neurology is pushed too hard, your T cell numbers go down, the thymus cell production, your immune system goes down, and illness begins to manifest as a result of that. So we're constantly in and out of memories. These memories are stored as holographic containers, and the energy contained in these happens to be, if it's traumatic or if it's chaos or if it's painful. How many times are we living in these emotions when we're going through the day and these things keep popping up 24/7, and we're not even aware of most of it taking place? So HMT is a quick way to change the meaning of all these memories because we're allowed to change them. It allows you to dialogue with all levels of the neurology, allowing you to access and change these memories, edit them in ways that fit you individually best, and do whatever you want. So this means that for every one of those memories that begins to surface, anywhere from 15 to 50 times per hour, you'll only remember them in ways that make your life better. So how do we change it? How do we remove these holograms that aren't helpful? Well, first we need to go over a couple of rules, okay? The code that manages these different structures to your neurology are accessible to you if you can do three things. Follow instructions. If you can become absorbed and focused, okay? What that means is, I'm sure everyone here has went into a movie theater. You ever went to a movie theater, been thinking about for the past few months, and it's finally time and you're finally here and you're about to sit down and you're focused and you're absorbed and you're watching the screen and you're completely absorbed into it. Now picture the same scene, but you suddenly realize that you left your window down in your car and you hear thunder and you hear rain on the roof. How absorbed are you now? It's a different scenario. You're thinking about rain. You're thinking about, oh, did I leave my window down? My seat's going to be all wet. That's not focused, okay? You're not focused in that scenario, right? So be absorbed and focus. You don't have to even believe this works. You don't even have to believe it at all. This is all based on neuroscience, and it will work whether you believe it or not. The third one, the key here is to play pretend. Now, in this kind of work, being too serious is the kiss of death. If you can be playful, if you can follow instructions, and you can pretend, you can change anything you want. So now what we'll do is we're all going to work on getting rid of something we don't want. Okay, so here's the secret. Your unconscious mind always answers first, and it always answers honestly. So when I ask a question, the first thing that pops up in your head, okay, is the right answer. So what I want you to do is I want you to think of something that on an unpleasant scale, on a crappiness scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the worst, okay, 0 being completely at bliss, I want you to pick something out that has an emotional intensity of a 3 or 4. And I want you to really think about this thing that's bothering you, whatever it is. This time, maybe a circumstance, whatever it is. Okay, just close your eyes and think about this. And as you're thinking about it, you'll start to notice a place in your body where you feel it. Okay, use your imagination. What I want you to do is where you feel it in your body, I want you to physically point to where it's at. Most people point somewhere in the midsection. Some people point at their gut a lot of times because of the immense amount of neurological tissue there. But I want you to just point at that, your first impression. And now using your imagination, I want you to imagine out in front of you that there's an image floating around in front of you that represents this picture. So first impression, I want you to reach out and touch it with your other hand. Now it doesn't have to be a picture, but you just have to know it's there. So reach out and touch this, okay? And then once you have that, use both hands and actually outline the picture. You don't even have to know it's a picture, you just have to know something is there, okay? And be sure to have the right one just to make sure. We're gonna grab that image. Once you reach out, touch it, trace both sides, grab that image and stretch it out twice the size. Make it twice as big. Remember, we're playing pretend here. Pay attention to that feeling in your body. You might notice it's changed, okay? So shrink it back down, okay? To the size of a postage stamp. Shrink it right down to that, crumple it up, and throw it behind you. And picture a huge bank vault door slamming shut. Now, what just happened? Try to bring it back. Try to really bring back whatever that was you just threw behind you. You mean you're thinking to yourself, I just grabbed something that wasn't there. Made me feel bad, threw it behind me, and I can't bring it back. How'd that work? Well, it works because everything about your nervous system has a code to it. It's written just like a computer program, but it's not a computer program. Sometimes people say, we're just like computers. That's not true. We were here first, so we're a little bit better, okay? And what we just did was we accessed what's called your grid, okay? And this works on your proprioceptive nervous system. And the other part it works on is your mirror neurons. Tiffany, are you listening? Can you bring up that image? So this works interactively, what's called the torus field and what's called a homunculus. So this is all based on neuroscience. This is a picture of a homunculus, rather strange looking creature. But what you'll notice is the huge amount of hands, how big the hands are, how big the face and the lips are, and the eyes, okay? Now what this means, what this picture represents, this is a homunculus. You can easily Google this. This shows the immense amount of neurological connections to the brain. So our brain, okay, when you look at the landscape of the brain, our hands are everywhere. They take up a tremendous amount of landscape on the brain. Can you bring up the torus field now? Now this is what's called a torus field. This is an 8 feet diameter electromagnetic field around our body, measurable with instruments. So basically, when we have a memory as a stored hologram inside of our body, that image that represents through our nervous system, how our nervous system constructs it and interprets it, shows up as an image right up on that field in front of us. So using the high amount of neurological connection with our hands and the way this field works around us, those are two of the things that allow us to access this, along with our what's called our proprioceptive nervous system. Now, our proprioceptive nervous system is probably the closest thing we have to what you could call a sixth sense, okay? But it's a sixth, seventh, and eighth, and ninth sense. It's nerve endings that end, and they go into several different types of receptors: mechanoreceptors, nociceptors, anterior receptors. This is the type of nervous system that if you close your eyes and you put your hand somewhere in space, you'd know exactly where they are. It also has to do with, if you reach in your pocket and you find a key, you'll know it's a key without seeing it. But it's a little bit more. The proprioceptive nervous system actually interacts with that torus field quite significantly. Anyone that's ever had the feeling someone's staring at you before, which 95% of people in surveys say they have felt, maybe through a window, or you're walking somewhere and you have this sensation that someone's staring at you. That's your proprioceptive nervous system monitoring and giving your brain feedback. So this is all based on the language of the neurology, okay? What we just did was access your grid. And this works interactively with the torus field that surrounds us. And again, because of the complex neurology within our hands. So this is all the language of the neurology: size, shape, location. All of these have meaning to the nervous system. It's basically the alphabet that the nervous system runs on. So if you want to go further into this and resolve much deeper issues, contact me for a one-on-one session. And I am currently training therapists into these methods. And I'll have another webinar soon going into the depth on what our school teaches, the methods, how our therapists are going to absolutely sweep the nation, changing lives in ways that are well beyond what's currently offered with our current forms of psychotherapy. And for most people today, like I said, this technique will make meditation obsolete because it allows you to dialogue with the full control of your neurological system. So I will take some questions. If anyone has any questions about this, is there a way we can do that? Can they maybe unmute one at a time if they would like to do that?
I think they have to type it into the chat.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I'm curious to get a little bit of feedback because I can't hear anyone's response. Did anyone have anything they'd like to comment on or question on? Were you able to actually get rid of whatever it was you were trying to get rid of? Is anyone typing anything in? Are they able to communicate that way?
I don't. Oh, okay. Janet says,
Okay.
it was certainly a very interesting experience. Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting experience. Janet, did you notice that whatever it was disappeared?
And Cecil also is asking, is this a one-shot thing?
No.
As in a therapy?
Can she be a little more specific? Is this a one?
Yeah, Cecil is asking, as in a therapy perspective, is this a one-shot thing?
No, there's actually a number of different techniques that I go through with my therapists that all address the hologram that's stored within our body. This was just one called holographic deletion on how to get rid of something, okay? What I want to do is I want to do it again, okay? So if everyone would participate, are the sessions?
Janet?
Yeah, the session's progressive. Yes, what we mean by what I'm thinking you're meaning, this is my own interpretation, is you continue to do this. Yes, because it's not uncommon for someone to get rid of 5, 6, 7 holograms of things that they don't want, that aren't serving them. Maybe an event that happened when you're a kid, it comes up once in a while, or an argument with a loved one, or something your neighbor did that upset you. Maybe a boss that suppressed you a long time ago. We all have baggage we carry in the forms of holograms within our own neurology. Could have been a bad event when you were younger. It could have been something that happened an hour ago. Whatever it is that's stored that troubles you, it comes up once in a while. And like I said, we go in the trance so often that when these things pop up, the minute we actually suppress them, which is very common, people Netflix them out. They have something come up they don't want to think about. So what do? They go drink, or they eat some sugar, or any number of things. They get on social media. Well, for every unit of energy that this hologram contains, it takes an equal amount of energy to keep it suppressed. And that's why people begin to feel fatigue. They begin to get pains. They begin to develop illness and cancer. And it doesn't matter what you do, because I've went through all of this, supplement wise, nutrition wise, okay, protocol wise, whatever, because their nervous system is still under that threat mode. Now, what I'd like to do is
one thing.
Okay.
Sorry, hon. Janet is also asking, do you usually do one situation in several sessions, like in layers?
Well, usually when a person contacts me, they have some direct issues they want to get rid of. So we usually target that. And from the session alone, they've been given enough tools to where they can kind of reproduce some of what we did so they can maintenance themselves. They understand, because I go in with my clients, I go a little bit more in depth. I teach them how the mind works. I show them how your emotions instantly skew your filters. I show them how, I give you a blueprint of your mind, how your mind works, rather than just having you come in, we do a therapy and I never see you again. I'd rather say, okay, every conscious thought you ever have, here, I'll cover this real quick. If we're going to talk about emotions, we want to understand how our mind works just a little better. So let's say this is our body. And this is our mind here. And this is our conscious. This is our subconscious. Remember, we have 2.3 million bits per second. And this comes from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's scientifically validated numbers he's figured out. So we have 2.3 million bits per second come into our nervous system from the environment. We are only aware of 126. So every conscious thought we have has been ran through our neurology and then ran through filters, early memories put in place from 0 to 6. So in my sessions, I not only target what apps are going on and what's really had you stood up, but we also go back here and change these early beliefs, because now everything that comes in here is going to be filtered completely different as well. But what I'd like to do is, if everyone's listening and they're up for it, let's try getting rid of something else. Okay. So what I want everyone to do is, again, you got to play pretend. You don't even have to believe it, but you just got to go through the motions we're doing and follow direction. Okay. The reason I want to do this again is because I realized I left a step out. Okay. And I think I have a couple of therapists that are listening. They're probably like, wait, he didn't talk about the color. Okay. So what I want to do is, I want you to think of something else that you want to get rid of, something that whenever you think about it, makes you feel uncomfortable. Okay. You don't even have to tell me what it is. You never have to tell us what it is. Okay. And you might not even know what it is, but it's just an uncomfortable feeling. I want you to think about that feeling, that discomfort. Maybe you had an argument with someone, or you witnessed something you just can't get over. But I want it to be an emotional charge, again, about a 3 or 4. I don't want to have to go through and try to fix everyone if they, bring something up. But about a 3 or 4, think of something that's a weight of a 3 or 4. Really feel that in your body. Your first impression, don't overthink it. Where do you feel that in your body? Point to it with one hand. Now imagine out there in that torus field, floating in space, there's an image that represents this. With your hand, reach out and touch that image. Now with both hands, reach out and trace both sides of that image, and you'll notice your hands take on a life of their own if you let them, because of how much bandwidth the brain takes up. Now, once you get this image, what color comes to mind with this image? First impression, some kind of color. You ask a question, it takes 3 seconds for your neurology to scan 13 trillion cells and bring an answer to your conscious mind. You'll notice there's a color to it, okay? Then what you want to do is put a frame around this if it's something you want to get rid of. Then you want to contrast this white or black. So with your imagination, feel along the bottom of that knob, on the bottom of that frame. Find a knob and start turning that image to the, turning this knob to the right and watch that image start to blacken out a little bit. Again, you're playing pretend. And then you want to slowly turn it to the left, turn it the opposite way, and watch that color, that image, start to whiten out. And you'll notice it feels different in your body. Which one of those feels better? It'll be completely different for everyone, and that's okay because we're all different. Whichever direction feels better, whether it's white or black, crank that knob all the way that way until it feels great, until it feels much better. Then take that image, shrink it down to the size of a postage stamp, use your hands, throw it behind you, and picture throwing that image into a campfire. Literally watch it with your imagination. Land in a fire, flames engulf it, sparks, blows off in the wind, and you're actually smelling a little bit of smoke. You get your senses involved. Now, how was that experience for everyone? Probably a little different than the first time I did it, right? Who was asking the question? Janet, how was that? What'd you think of that? Uh, what's she saying?
Oh yeah, she forgot to hit enter earlier. So she was saying the filters are from our parents, our siblings, and everything around us, including school and work. Yeah, she forgot to hit enter before we just did that last experiment.
Yes, that's correct. Your filters are from, there's a number of filters, but the earliest ones, the strongest ones are from ages 0 to 6. But they can change. You can get in a relationship and be in that for years, and it'll change filters too. Does anyone else have any? Go ahead.
One thing we could mention here, if you did delete something, you could experience maybe some sweats or, you know, a little bit of a fatigue. It's not like a huge number on the scale, but you could experience some kind of neurological change as well.
Yeah, did anyone here get chills or have a little bit of sweat come on from that, or maybe even some emotions kind of come up as you threw this behind you? What that's doing is called an emotional detox. And that is basically, as you're removing this app from your neurological field, your nervous system immediately gets upgraded, and to the deepest core level of you, your endocrine system, your nervous system, your immune system, everything begins to get upgraded from removing that. And that's what that's why your neurology is upgrading. You might have a sweat, you might feel a little odd.
And Janet said that she liked the experience. Turning to the white was much lighter in experience, no chills or sweat. Thank you very much for sharing that, Janet.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have any kinds of questions or comments they'd like to say before we wrap this up? No? Are you not getting any messages?
I don't see anything right now.
All right. Well, I hope this was enjoyable for you guys, just to kind of learn a little bit more about how our memories are stored and how emotions take a big role in our health, and what this technology is going to do. It's going to absolutely sweep the nation and change everything because um, it's fast, it's highly effective, and it includes all levels of the neurology. Okay, I see.
Um,
Yeah, I see. Go ahead and
yep,
ask.
yeah, yep. Yeah, Deborah says, what about the memories from abuse that are unconscious?
Okay, so this is fantastic for that. Again, what's happened is, if you remember back to my chart I drew about holograms, what happens is those memories get stored as holograms in our body. And when you think about those things, or maybe you don't even understand, maybe you don't ever feel those, but you just know you've had a traumatic past. Most people, when I tell them it's from your childhood, 0 to 6, 0 to 7, they always say, I don't remember that. Your unconscious mind does. Your unconscious mind records everything that's ever happened to you from even in the womb. We know that we now have validated scientific data for even cellular memories being passed down. So from the womb, from birth on, our unconscious mind is recording this 2.3 million bits per second of data is like having 5 camcorders going and recording everything. So your unconscious mind records all of it and stores it. And what happens with abuse, it's the same thing. What happens with those kind of incidences are those holograms actually have a lot more significant energy to them. Okay. And sometimes these things pop up, sometimes they don't, but they're still running and they're still burning resources. You can tell because your body's just not able to rest. Well, those stored holograms, your unconscious mind basically still feels like the threat is going on. Did that answer your question?
And Judy is saying, what about trauma at birth?
The same exact thing happens. The same exact thing happens. When you're regressing people back, the subconscious mind knows, okay? It knows, it's recorded everything. And that's really where you're going to find the answer to things. The person will all of a sudden have this intuition, just like today. I said, where's it at? You reached for it. I said, what color? A color came to your mind. When we're regressing people back and we're hitting these earliest filters, it's not uncommon for me to have, I'll just say this. I had a client once that came in, she had a significant D value problem. She was overweight. She had tried everything. She had went to different types of therapists. She had tried several different coaches for helping her having breakthroughs, and she would lose weight, but she'd gain it right back. And whenever she came to me, she had this feeling of just not being valued. I just don't love myself. I don't love myself deep down. And when I asked her unconscious mind where that came from, it was several generations back. Her unconscious mind answered it clearly for us. And it was a rather traumatic case when a woman was raped, and abortion was um, what was it? Abortion was a big thing. They could not do that because of some religious beliefs. And so her response, this woman that was raped that had to have a baby, she goes, I have to have this thing. I have to have this thing. And that, can you imagine the hologram stored from that and then passed down generationally all the way to that? I don't have all the answers, but the subconscious mind, whenever it tells me something, I know that it answers first. It always answers correctly. We always have a tendency to think that we're making it up. When that pops up, we might think, I'm just making that up. No, you're not. And we always have an urge to edit it. And those are our gut feelings that we've learned today to not listen to. I hope that helps. So anything traumatic that the unconscious reveals to you in the right circumstances, you can actually change the meaning from. Just like we did today, we kind of changed whatever that hologram was, we changed the meaning of it to the nervous system. I never asked anyone their story because the story doesn't matter. How your body interprets it is much more important. Any other questions or anything?
Does abuse and trauma just recharge the same loop, or does it create a new one?
Does abuse and trauma basically create a new loop? Loop. I'll tell you what, if it's something that happens several times, there are several holograms stored for that. Now, if it's anger and rage, they can actually get filed together in the neurology the same, because your unconscious mind will start to sort things by alike emotions. Okay. But the more incidences you have, the more recordings, the more experiences you have that are either traumatic or abusive or shameful or guilty or resentful, those are all encased and stored. So they all begin to take a toll on the nervous system. I hope that helps. You see how our own filters are in place whenever I'm answering questions through interpretation. Does anyone else have any other questions they can think of?
I don't see any popping up. I do want to recommend maybe everyone follow you on Facebook at the Dr. Gabe Roberts, where we'll have updates on upcoming seminars and events to answer more questions for sure.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining me, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and good night.